Today I am going to use my book again to show you how different things are named. Before we actually get into muscles and how to determine what they're called, it is vital that you do look at the bones of the skull, as most of these will end up having the same names as skull. And I am going to show you some muscles. Remember, always look at what the names mean. So for instance, if you hear depressor, know that it's going to pull something down. If it says superioris, it means above, inferioris, below. And so one of the things that you do want to do is, as you look at this, look at what you're actually looking at. I'm going to start with the muscles of the face and head, and most of these can be actually broken down into different types of muscles. You have muscles of facial expression and muscles of mastication. People will talk about origins, they'll talk about insertions and innervations. Origin is pretty much where the muscle begins, but it doesn't cause a movement at that place. Insertion is where it usually will cause a movement, and the innervation is a nerve that acts on it. What I'm going to deal with first is I'm going to talk about the muscles of facial expression. And most of them are innervated by it's a nerve that comes straight off the brain, and it's called cranial nerve 7. Cranial nerve 7 is called the facial nerve, and all the muscles that I talk about which cause facial expression will be innervated by that cranial nerve. When we get into neuro, we'll talk a lot more about it. For the muscles of mastication, you have cranial nerve 5, which is called the trigeminal. Tri means 3, geminal means twins, so you're talking about triplets. So the cranial nerve 5 has 3 branches, and those are going to be involved mostly in mastication. Now, both of these nerves can end up doing other things. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to name all the muscles of mastication, but you can see how some of these are named. What I'm first going to do is I'm going to show you a picture here. And what we have certain muscles. Some of the muscles are known for the bones that they're over. So this area here, if you remember, is your frontal bone. These two muscles are called the frontalis muscles. Over here you have the temporal bone. This muscle is called the temporalis. The temporalis starts at, and it goes to the mandible, coracoid process to help pull it up. So this is a muscle of mastication. The frontal is a muscle of facial expression. You also have a big one here, which is called the masseter. It again is a muscle of mastication. It goes from the zygomatic arch to the angle of the mandible, causing you to be able to pull that up. Now the other muscles we see here are going to be of facial expression. Now one we have here and here are both round sphincter muscles. And so we need special names for them. And what we have is the word orbicularis. Anytime you see the word orbicularis, know that it's a circular muscle. When this one closes, it closes the eye. When this one closes, it closes the lips. So as we have the eye and the lips, we have orbicularis oculi. Think of ocular for eye. And for the mouth, we have orbicularis oris. Oris means mouth. You also do have certain muscles here, like this really long one, going from the zygomatic bone to the angle of the mouth. This one here, which is also a zygomatic bone to the angle of the mouth. This is a muscle of facial expression, and both of these share the name zygomaticus. The bigger one is zygomaticus major, smaller one would be minor. And you can see how a lot of these muscles are named. There are a lot of muscles in the book. It will tell you how to look at the muscles and how to determine them, but right now I just want you to get a basic feel for it. Now, there is another group of muscles that I want you to know, and these are not part of mastication or facial expression. You actually have a muscle you can see here going from the sternum and the clavicle and going up to the mastoid process here. So we call it the sternocleidomastoid, this muscle here. This is a very important muscle for a lot of reasons. One of the main ones is it helps you find a triangle of the neck here. So you know this bone here is a clavicle. You have the sternocleidomastoid. And back here, you see a muscle called the trapezius, which really helps you move your shoulder around, which we'll talk about later. And so you do have triangles that are going to help you out. I really recommend looking at the triangles because if you notice here, the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius, you know what's here, and we'll show you those later. And there are a lot of different triangles in the head. Now, I'm going to go down, and so I'm going to show you the next one. Now, over here, you're actually seeing the inside of the neck. The mastoid process is here, so it would be coming this way here and here, so you can see where the triangle would be. I'll put a line here. And you have you have a lot of different muscles here. One of them is going from the hyoid bone here, and it has 2 bellies. One belly here, one belly here. Now this one's going, as you can see, to the shoulder area girdle. And so it's called the omo for shoulder, hyoid. Now one of the things you'll notice is a lot of them are named after the bones they touch. Now, over here, you have another muscle, which has 2 bellies also. Makes it really interesting. But this one is only a 2-bellied muscle which they call the digastric. And so you can see it goes to from the back of the mandible to the hyoid bone to the mastoid process here. And you can see another triangle right here. You see the styloid process here, the hyoid bone here, and you see the digastric here. So you see this triangle. And over here, you have the stylohyoid. Again, you notice stylo for styloid process, hyoid. And this will end up when you pulling the hyoid bone up. Again, one of the big things with the muscles is I'm actually just showing you where you can see triangles. When you look at these triangles, you will see that a lot of them will give you points of orientation, and that's what I would really like you to be able to see. Sternohyoid, sternothyro, thyrohyoid. You can see how all these are named. The other thing that you have a lot of muscles for the tongue, and I'm not going to show you those except to tell you that most of them have the name glosso associated with them. So if you have a hyoglossal, it comes from the hyoid bone to the tongue. Myloglossus is actually coming from the back here to the tongue. Genioglossus is also doing that, and the palatoglossus from the palatine bone to the tongue. So anytime you see glossus, remember it's tongue. And that's one of the big things. Like I said, the biggest thing for learning muscles is understanding where they are. I really like you guys to know the nerves that innervate it, usually neurons, because once you know all the muscles, it's just follow the nerves and seeing where they go. Here you can see the muscles again, sternocleidomastoid, sternohyoid, and the line here. So you can see these different muscles, but you have the sternocleidomastoid here. This one here is the trapezius. And you have 3 muscles, 1, 2, 3 here, called the scalenes. Now the scalenes are important because they actually help lift your rib cage or rotate your head. And these here are going to be muscles of inspiration later. Again, if you notice, I'm not trying to tell you all the muscles, but I do want you to see that there are some muscles that are very important. For instance, we already talked about one that covers this area here, from the base of the skull to the spine of the scapula, and it comes around this way here, which is a trapezius, which you saw from the front. Now the reason it's important in the back is if you look here, your trapezius would come this way, latissimus dorsi, and you have the scapula here, giving you a triangle. Now once you look at the triangle, you know the trapezius is over here, the latissimus dorsi is here, scapula is here, and you can see these muscles here, which are kind of like diamond shaped, which they are called rhomboids. You can see the levator scapulae here. Now the other big muscle you have is pretty much these entire muscles here. You'll actually be able to tell when you look at what the names are. But together, they are usually referred to as the erector spinatus muscle group. And what it does is it keeps your back erect. Within the ribs, you also have certain muscles called the intercostals. Now, based on the name, costal means ribs, so intercostals are between the ribs. The other 3 muscles that are really important to know are here. And here you have a muscle running straight down. This is one of the words that is really important for you to know. Anytime you have a muscle running straight, it usually is called a rectus muscle. This one's in the abdominal cavity, so this is your rectus abdominis. Now, over here you can see that this muscle has been pulled off. And you have another muscle here. These 2 are pulling at angles. So we call this one out here, which would actually be folded over all this. This one here would be your external obliques. These would be internal. And underneath these, you have a 3rd layer, which is your transverse abdominis. So we now actually see a lot of the different muscles that of the abdominal cavity. Now, why are these muscles important? Well, they do help you. All these muscles can contract the abdomen, and if the abdomen is contracted, it pushes the abdominal cavities up and down. So a lot of times when you hold your breath and push, you can end up doing what's called the Valsalva maneuver, and it is useful in defecating and also useful in forced respiration. And those are pretty much the muscles I'm going to mention today. Like I said, there are a lot of them. If you're in my class, you will have to know all of them. But to really understand muscles, if you notice, you have the same words coming over and over again. So I will stop here, and hopefully this will give you a basic introduction. The biggest thing I would tell you is, if you actually do have the lab manual, before you really try to look at muscles, look at the list at the beginning. There's 23 different words. If you look at those words, it will help you understand what the muscles are that you're looking at. Usually I will tell you this lecture that I tend to do it in about 2 hours, so you got a really quick version of it. Now, tomorrow, and yes, I plan to do this next video tomorrow, I want to finish all the muscles. I am going to go through the muscles, the appendicular muscles, and you have the same names, a lot of the same words that are going to be important. again. Now I am also going to only mention muscles that will be able to help you either recognize where you are or will help you later on in clinicals. I hope you enjoy this. Goodbye.